But the new intro that we want to do, there's a reason that we want to do it. But I probably, not even so much of a new intro, but there's probably a lot of people that are tuning in. Well, I know there's a lot of new listeners. The podcast has been growing. So people are probably tuning in from Netflix. And this is a podcast that I do as a comedian and a man about, as I've called it before, I do a little less of some of these things now, but this is a podcast about drinking, drugs, and religion, right? Because that is that's what makes up who I am. You know, I've lived a life of doing various substances, but now I'm pretty much sober, and I'm a religious guy. I've always been a little religious, but I take it more seriously these days, and I got a bit of a different perspective. I don't read the reviews of this podcast. Now, Hannah did not realize this because I read comments. I read YouTube comments, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. I mean, I'm all over comments.
And you got a thick skin.
I do. And I am all over them. But the thing that I like about those is, for the most part, I just like to respond. But if somebody really strikes a nerve with me, I just delete their comment. I normally don't. But if they really do bother me in such a way, they become real insulting, I'll just delete their comment. But there's nothing I can do about reviews. Now, it's not a big deal if they leave a low-star review. It's not really a big deal because this is not an actual business for me. This is a side project for my stand-up comedy. I say all that to say about the about why I call the podcast what I call it, why I give it its description. It's because it's not always going to be hilarious, right? It's more of a storytelling podcast, and it's turned into a podcast about our lives as a
family.
As a family, yeah. We're late to having kids, but we have our kids and we love them. But we have to figure out how to work this podcast around my schedule and around the schedule of our kids. Hannah recently came to me with a review from iTunes on the podcast, and she handed it to me. Now, I flew home Sunday on 3 hours of sleep. I got home from the shows and in bed and probably asleep by like 1 a.m. And then I had to be up at 4 a.m. to get on a flight to come home. So I'm here, about 3 hours of sleep. Hannah doesn't know that I don't read the reviews, and she hands me this review. Do you want to go for it?
Yeah. So the title of the review is They Need to Do Their Homework. And we got 3 out of 5 stars.
And I've always been great at homework. I've always, as a comedian, I was always a big fan of homework.
Mm-hmm. They need to do their homework. This is the review. These two are super cute, and I love their dialogue, and I really actually love the spiritual part of it. But they are ill-advised and uninformed on many issues.
They say informed, though. So I just because I read it earlier today, and I just want it to be said that they're trying to say we're ill-advised and uninformed, but they say we're ill-advised and informed. So if you're going to be insulting, just know that you're not very good at your grammatical stuff.
Yeah. It seems like a passionately written review because they clearly didn't review it to see if there was any spelling errors. They really needed to let us know how they felt.
We're getting bad advice, but we're pretty informed.
Okay. But they are ill-advised and uninformed on many issues, which is very cringy. You have to do your homework and research on issues because you immediately lose any seat of power when you don't know what you're talking about.
Now, Hannah was bothered most by them calling us cringy.
Yes.
And
I don't like to be called cringy. I know I do cringy things, but I don't like to think that a bunch of people are listening to us cringing. I'm like, geez.
See, I'm bothered by 2 other things.
Okay.
The first thing that bothers me is how they start the review.
Yeah, they really looped us in with some manipulation.
No, but it's a demeaning thing that people do. They say these two are very cute, Cute is not a compliment.
Oh.
Cute is not in this sense. Cute is their way of being like, oh, listen to them. They're just doing a thing. They're saying a lot of words, and it's just so cute. And then I love their dialogue. I love when they talk to each other. I like how they talk to each other.
They're so dumb, but they know how to talk.
And I actually love the spiritual aspect, but they're ill-advised. So it's like, well, what are we ill-advised on? They're not very specific on that. And then the last thing that bothers me is where they say they lose their seat of power. Because my seat on this particular podcast is a Walmart chair that I bought off Facebook Marketplace. I know it's a Walmart chair because later I saw it for sale in Walmart, but I bought it for even less money from a pretty sketchy dude in some apartment complex in Nashville. And then on top of it, I have an Afghan that my grandmother made. Not even an Afghan that my grandmother left to me when she died, just one that was in her house, and my sister went down and got it so that she made sure that all the siblings, all the grandkids got an Afghan, because that's how we best know our grandmother, for crocheting Afghans. So I don't necessarily consider this a seat of power, and I don't claim to have any other seat of power. And I can't imagine, this review just came in, so I imagine my last week's podcast was, less funny than normal, I would say, but I'm okay with it. But I did talk about COVID, right? So I assume that's where it's coming in. But what I was trying to do last week when referencing COVID was to try to say that, no matter what side you were on the COVID debate, either way we were duped, and we experienced trauma together as a country, regardless of what side you were on. We experienced this trauma, and we deserve some answers. That's all I'm saying. So I don't know how, and then when somebody says that you're ill-advised and uninformed, what they mean is
they're watching different TikToks than us.
Right. I believe something differently, and if you don't believe like me, then you believe the wrong stuff. Mm-hmm. That's it.